I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 6:31. Julie, if you could roll call us in.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. JC Herman.
Yes, I'm here.
Natalie Salee.
Here.
Andrew Weimer.
Hello. Here.
Matt Rogers.
Yes.
And Elaine Siegel.
And you can just mark what time she joins us.
Great.
Oh, I guess we don't have to wait for her for the minutes either, because I know Natalie wasn't there for one of those meetings. But we still have enough people. So does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes from June 2nd and August 18th, 2022?
Well, was everybody at both of those meetings? So we'll do them separately.
Oh, yes, thank you, because Andrew missed one and then Natalie missed the other.
Okay, that's what I was trying to look to see who was on which one. So I move approval of the REDI committee meetings for June 2nd, 2022.
Natalie, is that the one you missed?
Yeah.
I think I was there, so I can second that, right?
Yes. All right, is there any discussion on those minutes? All right, can we take a roll call vote for passing the minutes for June 2nd, please?
JC Herman.
Yes.
Natalie Salee.
I abstain.
Andrew Weimer. Matt Rogers.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, does somebody want to make a motion for August 18th, 2022 to pass those minutes?
I'll make a motion to pass the minutes from August 18th, 2022.
I'll second.
All right, thank you.
JC Herman.
Oh, hold on, is there
JC,
any question first?
Sorry.
I did have a just a note, and I'd already sent it to Julie, but in the minutes it said that I had discussed or I'd mentioned a resource fair on August 15th. It was actually October 15th. So I think she may have already made those adjustments, but I needed to say it out loud at the meeting.
Fantastic.
Also, I just want to correct the spelling of my name, which I just noticed is misspelled on all of these.
My apology.
No, that's fine. You won't be the first, you won't be the last, but there is a D in Rogers, R-O-D-G-E-R-S.
Great. I will make those corrections.
Thanks, Julie.
Hi,
JC
Elaine,
Herman.
welcome. Yes, sorry, Elaine, we're about to pass the minutes. Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't find the link.
It wasn't highlighted in blue this time. It was just black. I didn't think it was going to work when I clicked it. I'm sorry, Julie, go ahead.
All right, Natalie Salee.
Yes.
Andrew Weimer.
Abstain.
Matt Rogers.
Yes.
Elaine Siegel.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. We have a really big agenda today. The original idea was that we were going to focus mostly on the ordinance, but there's a couple other things that have come up. I am anticipating that we will end up tabling some of the things at the end of the agenda. I don't know that we should necessarily try to push through all of this in one meeting. I think we kind of need to see how these first few items, how long they take. Elaine had pointed out that the land acknowledgement, I believe, is actually a new item, or did that just fell off the agenda at one point, Natalie?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
No, I feel like it's come up before, but I put it here under new business because I don't know that we've ever actually discussed it. I can't remember. I know that I talked about it in my report to the board.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Okay.
But so it would be new business for us.
Okay, fantastic. So we don't have any old business. Under new business, we have under for action, the first item is the removal of the basketball hoops. Natalie, I was hoping maybe you can give us a little history in general of the Park District with this complaint, and then let us know about the current complaint.
Yeah. So, and I know that Julie had forwarded that to everybody, so hopefully you've had a chance to look through it. But that was a message that had come to me through our Facebook Messenger, and that's the first, I guess, since the committee's formation that I've received a message like that having something to do with directly speaking to equity. So I had let the gentleman know who sent the message that I would send it to our executive director and to our REDI committee, because that's part of the reason we exist. So, with the caveat that I'm not sure we know what to do with it yet, but it's, I think, the right thing to do to bring it up to everybody's attention. So anyway, I can tell you from my understanding a little bit about the history of the basketball courts. A lot of the decisions that had been made about the courts and the changes that had been made to the nets happened before I was working at Ridgeville Park District. So this is just my understanding of the history. But we used to have a full court at Reba Park. And there's lots of different things were happening there. But one of the things that was happening, there's a giant tree that grows in the middle of Reba Park, and the root system was up, was cracking the cement or whatever that is, the turf there for the basketball court. So there was some safety concerns about the court in general. In addition to that, it's also a very, very tiny park and is like very wedged into two residential buildings. So it was heavily used. We received a lot of noise complaints about, people playing past the open hours of the park, using lots of foul language. And so we had a lot of citizens coming to board meetings to talk about that. In addition to that, there was also the safety concern about the actual cracks in the court. So from what I understand, the solution to all of that, or the compromise, was to make it a half court, which resolved the safety concerns with the root system, and also, I guess, addressed some of the noise complaint. I don't think the board wanted to take the court out entirely, so they made it a half court. One of the other things that came up during that time, per a suggestion from a commissioner, was that we put on basketball nets that can be removed, so that the nets could be up from 9 to 9 during open park hours and then come down, so there wasn't as much traffic and use of the space after the park was closed. We don't have staff that stays at the park till 9 o'clock. So, there's lots of things have happened. There's been complaints about the nets coming down too early. Then the solution was to just leave them up all the time and see how it goes. And then the noise complaints would start. And I'm speaking now more toward the court at Ridgeville Park. So, so in my time there's been let's leave them up all the time and hope for the best. The noise complaints will come in, so then they'll start coming down at 9. Sometimes there's some staffing issues and they come down before the 9 o'clock, or we take them down for special events, in which case, if I know that that's happening, I'll put signs up to let folks know that this is why they're coming down early. They'll come back up as soon as the event's over, just so people understand, shared space, why this is happening. But sometimes they come down and I'm not aware of it, so there's no signage. But anyway, so that's as far as what I know of the history of the basketball courts and the nets, that's a little bit of my knowledge. So when this particular message came in, the day it happened was the day of our final concert. It was our big end of summer party. It seems as though our youth and the park staff, which are the ones that typically remove them, had been taking them down for the concerts. I don't know if that's true for every concert. I do know I saw it happen one night and brought it to Brian's attention. And it seemed at that moment it was a special circumstance. When I found out that they had come down at the event after reading this message, I asked around some of the staff, and it seemed like there had been an incident with an adult basketball player who was cursing at the kids. And so the youth and the park staff opted to take them down early that day, but I didn't know that that had happened until later. So that's what I know. Did I leave anything out, JC?
I mean, I think the only thing that I would add is I feel like this is a topic that is reoccurring and something that the community feels really passionate about.
Yeah.
This is something that people do come to board meetings in pretty good sized numbers to voice their opinions. So I think that it's clearly something that the community is really, it's important to them on both ends, both from the being able to live next to the basketball courts, but also being able to have access to the courts. Natalie, thank you for filling us in on all of that. I mean, I know there's more stories and there's more, individual events that had happened, but I think that's a good
yeah. It's very divided. I will say we do get a lot of complaints about the noise. And pretty specifically, when I say noise, it's like either after hours noise, or it's about like language that's being used by the players. It's the complaints that come in are pretty specific to that. But that being said, I think the board has opted to try different things. And I think when we've had varying commissioners and different board presidents, I think people kind of problem solve in different ways. So, I think obviously it's important for us to like talk about the complaint and discuss that. But I think it, maybe doing a deep dive and making a recommendation for how to solve both problems might be helpful for this existing board.
I think we also should be aware that that this problem has some rather deep roots, and there, well, in the past, I can't even remember how long ago it was. Maybe 15 years ago, maybe longer. There were some very ugly remarks that were made about the people that were playing on the courts, and that left a scar in the community. And it was something that came up with the discussion, the delegation that came to the park district meeting that really led to the formation of the REDI committee. So I think that that we need to be very sensitive to that and think carefully about how we can resolve this and how we can communicate that.
I appreciate that, Elaine. It's something that I think, as you mentioned, has, particularly happened in our community. And there's also, the stigma that gets attached with sports that are played by Black people, right? People are in some situations going to be a little bit more likely to make a noise complaint when it's people of color who are playing basketball. And I want to acknowledge that is an issue that happens not only in our community, but in our country. And I also just want to take a minute. I'm not sure who it was that posted, but I do want to thank that person for opening up this dialogue. I appreciate that information came to the park district instead of just kind of running around the community. This gives us an opportunity not only to find out what happened, because that information did not get relayed back to Natalie, as she had mentioned. But again, this is a longstanding issue that I think we need to come up with a more permanent solution for. So I'm not taking credit for any of the ideas that I am bringing to you today. Everything that I'm bringing to you is from discussions that I've had with Aisha. I'm just going to throw out there, I'm so grateful for Aisha's support. I think the couple things that have come up in the last couple weeks are difficult things for us to manage, is why we needed a consultant. And in the conversations I've had with Aisha, I not only have I learned a ton already, but I think that she has some really great, views and recommendations for us. So I'm giving her everything I'm giving you today is from her. I take credit for none of this. And I want to take a minute. The person who posted on Facebook also provided links to those articles, and I wanted to extend a thank you for providing us with those resources. I think that's really helpful. So one of the questions is, and Natalie, I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to verify with you. As far as you know, there's never been like an apology or any sort of statement that's gone back out to the community to explain any of these events outside of board meetings. Is that correct?
No, I mean, beyond just like one-on-one conversations, when people have emailed or called the office and spoken to myself or Brian, you know, sometimes they also come to board meetings, but other than just like one-on-one conversations, like I don't think anything has been like publicly issued.
So that's something that might be helpful. You know, right, because the park district doesn't want these things to be happening, right? So like a heartfelt apology that these things are happening and an explanation as to why, because I think that's another really important piece that people aren't aware of, is that these complaints, in particular, that these complaints are not coming from the park district or necessarily the park district staff, that it's the residents who are living next to the courts. So one of the other recommendations was, you know, in regard specifically to this event, is putting out a statement explaining what happened and why the hoops were taken down when they were. And I think also, you know, we could add in there that we are working on a more consistent policy that will be more predictable and that will reflect our desire to have this shared space not only be used by the community, but also be used in a way that it's not going to, you know, disrupt the neighbors. You know, Aisha recommended this idea of the policy being consistent and predictable and available to the community. I think is going to be really important to help manage these decisions moving forward. And then the other piece that occurred to me when we were having the discussion is that the parks and the staff, or the youth and the park staff, has not gone through equity training. So I think that that's something that we, you know, can make a recommendation to the board that, you know, the committee and the board are going through this equity training, but I think that equity training needs to extend beyond, particularly to youth in the parks, and maybe even, you know, the staff that comes back. I know there's teachers who only come for like one session and classes don't run, but that may be the people who are here more consistently, you know, try to get as many people as possibly going through the equity training.
From my vantage point across the street from the park, I have to say that there are all kinds of events, you know, musical events, drums, what have you, that make much more noise than the basketball courts do. And I'm out and about a lot, and I hear how much noise is being made. And I think that there's a problem with community perception that we need to address, and I think it's very difficult to do that. I think that you know, if there's a baseball game going on, to draw a rather obvious comparison, there's going to be a lot of action. There are going to be parents that are yelling. Same with the soccer game. If you live in the area, that comes with the territory. And I don't know why it is that we should be treating basketball any differently. I can't think of any reason at all that's justifiable. And I think that that's something that needs to be communicated to the community. If they're living next to the park, there's going to be a little bit of noise, and frankly, it's just not very much. I'm around there all the time. It's not a problem.
JC, now that I'm saying this out loud, I feel like maybe I did post something on social media about this a couple years ago when it was coming up at that point, because I think that it was around the same time that we were getting, the new website was being put together. Thank you, Matt Rogers. And I think the board had come up with a solution, like a 9-to-9 solution, and I had posted it on the website. So and I think I posted it on our social media page as well. So I'm going to dig through that and see if I can find it.
And I think echo what JC was saying. Communication and consistency are going to be the most important things. ensuring that the community understands what happens in that space, and then the expectation from the park district as well. And then because the hoops came down in a timing that wasn't communicated beforehand, I do think either an apology or a statement about what happened to share. We're aware and we take ownership and responsibility for this, that we didn't communicate beforehand, demonstrates that there's an effort there to bridge that connection. And again, open communication, accountability, and that works towards building relationship, building community, and instilling trust, so that then if something happens like that in the future, people can look back on the reputation and what happens with the park district and how the park district responds, to know that, okay, in the past when this has happened, there's been communication. So the question can be, before we were informed, but this was different. So creating a different norm and expectation. I think it's also important for people to know how to find the communication as well, and making sure that we're using the appropriate places to communicate these things, the expectations.
I think that was going to be my suggestion. We had put together not a rule sheet, but like a suggested use and kind of explanation of like the multi-use space next to the courts when we added the skate equipment. It would make sense to me to make something like that we could put up next to the courts as well, that just states like, these are the open times. The nets may come down at 9 p.m. or they may come down for special events, but I think just setting up expectations for the players, I think would help avoid some of these things, because there's gonna be times where the nets have to come down, and like maybe it is outside of the 9 to 9 time frame, and like maybe they come down and I don't know, so I haven't been able to put up a piece of paper that tells people. But I think just like setting expectations in a similar way that we did with the multi-use court could be really helpful.
I'd suggest too that we do some messaging about how much we value the people that come and use the various facilities, how welcome they are, and how much we appreciate having them there. And these are things that really contribute to the community, and they improve the welfare and well-being and the health and what have you of everybody involved. And it gives opportunities for people to get to know each other and make social connections. There are lots of reasons why these are valuable, and maybe some messaging along those lines would be a helpful thing too.
Just wanted to jump in. Sorry, I'm giving children supper and getting them ready for bed here while I'm with you all. Just to echo a few things, I want to just amplify what Elaine said about this hermeneutic of suspicion we call in philosophy about the complaints that come, and just being aware that we can be thinking about changing the culture, not in the park district itself, but also around us and impacting the community around us. One of the thoughts that did occur to me, I think, JC, as you said, that some of the staff in the summer don't have training. If there is a policy, which we really need to be transparent about this policy and have it accessible, possibly even a sign that's right there. But if there are aberrations, right, so someone has to close only certain people should be able to do that. People with equity training, people with certain knowledge and skills. That comes to mind as well.
Aisha, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Are the entire Youth in the Park staff are people of color? And I know a lot of them work for the high school, and I believe have some kind of equity training through that. I'm not 100% sure because I've never asked, but I guess we can talk about this outside the meeting too, if that's more appropriate. But I guess I'm wondering how to kind of approach the staff and ask for that training, like ask for equity training. Like if we decide or the board decides that like all staff should go through equity training, I think that's great. But I'm just I don't know. I guess I feel a little uncomfortable. I don't know why I feel uncomfortable, but
I think that,
does that make
yeah, I think we don't have to talk about that specifically, the question of why you feel uncomfortable, but I think that's something to reflect on and identify for yourself is why. But I think what we're trying to do across this committee, the board, and everyone who's, if it was a park district event and there is a community partner that you are working in partnership with, we want to make sure that everyone is speaking the same language, is having an understanding of concepts, ideas, and how to manage and deal with things in the same way. And so we all need to be on the same page. And so that's the approach, and that's the why of why everyone across the board should be having the same trainings, because we have to have a common language. We have to be coming from the same place. And we want the community to also get on board with that, but we also have to be on the same page as well first. So
okay.
that's the approach that I was taking, the why.
Okay. Yeah.
I do, and I think because the youth in the parks, I feel like the parts of the community that we are trying to reach out into that don't know about us as much, I feel like they're the ones on the front lines in those neighborhoods. And I aside from this situation, like Aisha was saying, I think it's really important that they're reflecting what we're trying to do in the building, so to speak, in the parks, right? Like I think that's really important. They're the first people some community members are meeting from the park district. And I think that they should be, hopefully on board, but at least, participating in the way that we're trying to approach these situations. I also, part of the purpose of equity training is for us to undo our own bad habits, and we all have them, regardless of what color our skin is. So I think that's just from that point of view of like, we all need to be doing this training on some level for some reason. Not clearly, not necessarily all for the same reasons, but like, if we're going to move forward, we all need to, have kind of the same toolbox that we're pulling from. I've been taking notes of some of these suggestions that you all have made. Does anybody want to throw anything else in before I review what was said so far? Okay. So Elaine, this piece of like changing community perception, I think that's really important. And Andrew, you echoed that. I think that we need to help people understand, just like Elaine was saying, there's lots of noise coming from the park, and we're not going to judge noise according to the activity. It's going to be more about the noise level. And like the timing, right? I think timing is important. On that note, I know there was some discussion at some point about the city of Evanston leaving their parks open 24 hours. I don't know where that landed, where Ridgeville landed. I know that was something that had come up in a board meeting a little while ago. I don't know if any answers had come from that. But if city of Evanston is going to be leaving their parks open 24 hours and Ridgeville is not, I think that's something that also needs to be communicated to people that, a lot of people don't know that the Ridgeville parks are not Evanston parks. That we're going to end up in that same boat if that change gets made. And I think that we need to be prepared for that if that happens. Aisha had mentioned sending out the message in regards to the most recent taking down of the basketball hoops, to make sure that we have open communication and that we're taking accountability for what happened. I would really hope that anybody who is upset by that happening can understand a little bit more. Maybe they don't necessarily agree, but they can understand a little bit more why that decision was made, knowing what was happening. And Elaine, this piece of letting people know that we really value the people who come and use the parks, and how that reflects, a healthy, happy community with opportunities to connect to each other, I think is really important. Right? Basketball is a lot more than just, people competing against each other. There's the community that gets formed around it. And the release of stress, especially after COVID, right? Like we need to make sure those opportunities are available to people. I think the idea of having signage at the parks is ideal, because the truth of it is I would kind of assume that the people who are coming to the basketball courts are not necessarily looking at our website or our Facebook page or coming to board meetings, right? They're coming to use the courts. So I think having signage at the parks, I think, is going to be really important. It's going to be the easiest way to access those people. I think even on that signage, we can, have the website and the Facebook, maybe we can even have like a QR code. So if they want to get more information, if they want to get more up-to-date information, they'll have access to that. And the other thing that occurs to me is, maybe we need to figure out a way each spring to kind of reiterate where the rules stand. Maybe if when, the weather's getting warm again, reminding people, the park's hours, it's shared space, both from the neighbor's point of view of, tolerating some of the sound, and the players, remembering that there's people who are living close by, doing that on a yearly basis. Maybe it's a Facebook post, maybe it's, I'm not really sure how we would do it differently than putting the signage up. But I wonder if that would be helpful too, like a seasonal reminder of how things go.
And I think, JC, that would be more effective if we had that combined with a welcome message. It's spring. Welcome to the courts. We're so glad to see you back. So on and so forth. And I think that there are plenty of people out that know how to put together those kinds of welcoming messages. And, there are a lot of facilities in the park, and people should feel very comfortable that they're, and be encouraged to use them.
Absolutely.
Can I ask
okay.
one question?
Oh, yes.
One facet from that complaint from Facebook was a comment about programming and a sense that we don't celebrate basketball in our programming and the courts that we have. And so I was wondering if we could talk, Natalie, how you respond to that, and then it kind of just builds on what we've already been talking about, finding ways to celebrate the basketball courts and basketball.
Thank you for asking me. We do actually do a basketball tournament in the summertime. We haven't been able to do it. We had to stop that with our other sports programming because of COVID. And that is a program that we intend to bring back in future summers. It was like a very last minute thing to get t-ball and soccer back up and running this summer. So, and with everything else, I honestly just didn't have time to do all of it and to bring it all back at once. But we have for many, many years now done a basketball tournament. In the summertime, there's no fee to play. We buy pizza. It's like a giant pizza party. The youth in the park staff is great about like recruiting kids and letting them know. And it's always a really fun, we get like little medals to give out. And it's always a really fun thing. I just anticipate this neighbor either just doesn't know because we haven't been able to do it the past few summers. But we have full intentions of continuing that summer tradition.
Another thing that I observed that I was very concerned about, we started getting a group of people, a group of fans that were coming over to the courts and having a picnic and and watching the games and cheering people on. And it was a very enthusiastic group and something that I was really glad to see happening. And a time or so, and I have no idea what exactly happened, but there were some cans that were left around and some trash, and people got up in arms about it. Well, we don't need cans and trash around, but we also don't need to turn that into a squelch on a very desirable activity. So it seems to me that there are much better ways to handle a small problem like that instead of having it kill the enthusiasm. And it did. Whatever the negative feedback was on that, and however it was that it got around, and I don't know the answer to that. But those picnics were greatly curtailed after there was a loud complaint about the trash.
I wasn't aware of that situation, Elaine. Thank you for sharing that. I had forgotten about that. It's right. It's 4-on-4 basketball. Is that I remember that now. I had forgotten about that. It's been a little while. So how would we like to proceed? I mean, we do have this as a 4-action item on the agenda. You know, we can come up with a formal recommendation for the board for the October meeting. I mean, I think in terms of you know, sending out an apology on Facebook, I don't know that, right? We don't need the board approval for that, Natalie, right? That's just something that, like, you could post it. I'm not saying that you should write it yourself, but that's something that you could just go post. Is that correct?
I mean, that feels kind of like a statement on behalf of Ridgeville Park District that I'm not comfortable
so it should
making.
go through the board.
Like, that needs to be a board advised thing. I think in dealing with this individual, he didn't I mean, he wrote me a personal message, like a direct message. So I can certainly, you know, respond to him again and just say, you know, that we talked about it and I'm sorry that happened and it was an inconvenience, and, you know, thank him for the links and whatnot, whatever. But I think in terms of like posting on behalf of the district, something like that, I think really needs to be board instructed.
Oh, yes, all that stuff. I meant just specifically the response to the individual.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think so.
I don't want you to feel the need to write that by yourself. I'm going to be home tomorrow. I can't go to work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable giving him an update on the conversations that we had tonight and letting him know if there's going to be a recommendation that we take to the board, letting him know what that is. I think he would probably really appreciate that. So.
Okay.
Why don't we put together a report that's reflecting the discussion that we've had tonight, the ideas that we've come up with, and the concerns that we've identified, and, you know, some possible responses. And you know, it doesn't have to be elaborate, but you know, a paragraph on each topic, and get that pulled together and presented to the board.
And would part of that be? Oh,
sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, and Matt's here, so maybe he can say, but maybe as part of that, if we're going to suggest that the board issue, you know, apology, that maybe we should draft, you know, provide a tentative draft, so we're not, you know, we're shaping that from our perspectives, but also we're not totally burdening the board down with creating something like that.
Yes, I think a combination of the two is what would be best. I think that in the board report that I do for October, I will make sure I have all these other suggestions in terms of the signage, you know, seeing if we can, right. I mean, we'll have to see what next summer looks like. There's going to be so many changes. But if we can get that, you know, 4-on-4 basketball back up and running, if we can get the signage at the park, you know, come up with a policy that's going to be consistent and predictable, which I also think we should draft and make a recommendation to the board of what that policy would look like. And then I think the other piece that we need to bring to the board is, I mean, essentially how the noise complaints are going to be dealt with, right? Like, there needs to be some sort of consistent standard. It's not just going to be because somebody complained about basketball that things are going to change when the concerts are much louder. You know what I mean? Like, I think that we need to make sure that the policy that we recommend is reflecting our views and values, and helping this piece of changing the community perception so that hopefully the complaints won't be the same moving forward.
Before I forget it, before I forget the idea, why don't we stick up a banner about the various sports? Why don't we have a basketball banner out there along with Shakespeare? I love Shakespeare, but how about a basketball?
Tainted, and I didn't have time. Because I hand make the banners.
Somebody can do that.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll bet there's an artist out there. Don't look at me. I'd make a mess.
I mean,
So in the spirit of we're coming up with great ideas, but I feel like a lot of this weight's going to fall on JC and Natalie. So JC, I'm willing to volunteer to help you tomorrow with whatever you're crafting. And Natalie, I'm not an artist, but I'm happy to help make a banner. So
I can almost guarantee you if we go and ask the community for some kids to put together a basketball banner for us, that will happen better than any of us could do it. You know, maybe Youth in the Parks can help recruit some kids to come. We can set up a time. If it happens at a time I'm available, I can come help support. And we have the community, either kids or grown-ups, right? Like maybe we can get some cool graffiti artwork up there, or I don't know, whatever someone else thinks is cool. You know, maybe this is another way to kind of bring those players into the park and let them know that they're appreciated.
That's what I was gonna say, is that type of idea is relational, and that's what you want to do, is figure out ways to bring in the community to be a part of the solution. So I think that's could be a really beautiful idea and a way to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's my other question. It's already 7:12. And we do have a couple things that I'd really like to make sure that we get to today. Not that I don't think that this is important, but I also think us wordsmithing a statement and a policy in a meeting is going to be challenging. If someone is willing, you know, if we can kind of break up into small groups, you know, making sure that we're not breaking OMA, maybe we can, you know, get some words down on paper so we're not starting from scratch. I don't know who else has been a part of wordsmithing in a group, but it takes forever. A smaller group, I think, will work much better. How would you all feel if we did that? We kind of divide and conquer. Some of us work towards we can do like the apology statement. Some of us can work towards a recommendation for policy to recommend to the board in terms of, you know, when the basketball hoops go up and down and how it's communicated to the community, including the signage and, you know, posting on the Facebook and all that. Does that sound good to everybody?
JC, just because I know this has been talked about in board meetings so extensively, there is language for it somewhere. Okay. I'm 100% certain it's on the website somewhere, but let me find it for you.
Okay.
Let me find what we've got. And then I can send it to Julie to send out to everybody. So, you know, we don't need to rebuild the wheel. Like the board has already talked about this ad nauseum multiple times over the course of many, many years. So like, let me see what exists already. And then that way we can figure out how to really specify what our recommendation is going to be. I think we all agree that like adding signage to the courts is important. So maybe we can kind of focus on, based on the language that exists within our ordinance and our policies, how do we create a welcoming sign for the courts that could be posted all year, right? Does that make sense to do that?
Yes,
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let me find that and I'll get that to y'all.
Yes, Andrew.
And I had a question as well then about the apology. Is it a violation of OMA if the apology is crafted and brought to our meeting and discussed in the meeting? Is that a violation of OMA?
No. I think
I didn't understand it to be either.
If three of us get together to do that, then it is. But I think if you're working on language, you know, we can talk to each other one-on-one. So like if Natalie and Andrew are going to put that together, that's okay. And then we can bring it to the open meeting and talk about it. My one vote would be that we don't spend the rest of the meeting trying to craft something. I personally don't do well with that, and I don't think we probably have time.
Okay, so let's do this then. Andrew, if you are available tomorrow, maybe you and I can throw together something for an apology for Natalie. And Natalie, if that's okay with you, I would just, you know, we have an opportunity to take something off your plate. If you feel more comfortable doing it yourself.
We're talking specifically to the gentleman that messaged me, right?
The one gentleman.
I mean, I'm fine doing that by myself. I don't need
Okay.
If you're comfortable with me doing that, I mean, I'm not saying anything out of line. I'm not speaking on behalf of Ridgeville. Like, I can talk to him and explain to him what we've discussed tonight and like, share our sentiments with him. I feel comfortable doing that.
Okay. And I don't know about the rest of the committee. I personally trust you. I've seen you in this position before. I think you do a really good job. Okay. So then
we also can, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, we also can, consistent with the Open Meetings Act, we also can draft our pieces and submit them as part of the agenda and circulate them in that way. So it's posted, it's public.
Yeah.
So should, Andrew, do you want to draft like a general apology out to the community with me that we can recommend to the board?
I think that would be an efficient use of all of our time. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And then we will wait on the policy until we get information from Natalie about what is existing currently. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't actually have anything to vote on because everything would just be in my report as a recommendation to the board, right? This isn't like an actual. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Is there anything else that anybody wants to discuss on the removal of the basketball hoops agenda item? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the land acknowledgement. This is Natalie's item.
I'm happy to table this for the next meeting. I just to kind of put it in your ear, I've been to a couple meetings with IAPD and IPRA, some different trainings and whatnot. And some of the presenters have started with the land acknowledgement. I've also seen it as like a signature in people's emails. And it really struck me as something that felt good and important. So I just wanted to talk to the committee to see if you shared my sentiments, and like, that's it. So I can pull some of those things that I've seen and like really put together an example of what I'm talking about if we table it, and then we can talk about it if we feel like we want to recommend that to the board.
I think we should. District 65 has started all their board meetings with a land acknowledgement now. I also, Natalie, just to slow you down a little bit. So IAPD is the Illinois Association for Park Districts. What was that second acronym that you just threw out?
IPRA is the Illinois Park and Rec Association. So the IPRA is for park professionals. I'm a member of that. And IAPD is more about like the district as a whole, boards, executive directors, that kind of a thing. So, so we as a district are a member of IAPD. I as an individual am a member of IPRA.
Okay, thank you.
The Art Institute has a good one if we want to take a look at one.
Ooh, okay.
If you all have them or you've seen them, if you just want to like shoot me an email, copy paste it, I'll just kind of collect those. I saw one that Northwestern had done. I mean, it can be as simple as just being a statement that we put on all of our agendas. It can go on the front page of our website. Like it can be I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. I just feel like, in my opinion, it's an important thing to do.
So just to raise as well that as we're considering, I think it's important to do this, and I'm really glad you brought this up, Natalie. And it's not but, it's an and. You know, as I've read and learned about land acknowledgements, particularly from Indigenous persons, persons with connections to tribes here in the region, is that land acknowledgements are kind of empty sometimes. And so part of this conversation needs to be about land acknowledgements, and then we need to start whatever the next conversation is about, we actually live into that. So that might be something for us to think about as a committee. Let's get the land acknowledged out there, but we can't just leave it at that. It's got to be followed by some other efforts.
That's great.
Thank you for that reminder, Andrew. And I'm excited to learn what those steps can be. I think that's something. I think it's something important and something that we don't talk enough about in our community. I mean, especially a place like Evanston, where land was taken from people on multiple different occasions for all of us to be the ones who landed here. I think that's a really important thing for us to remember. I appreciate that.
And we're a park district. We're land. we're open space and nature, and this is we bring people together to celebrate in these spaces, and we take a lot of pride in those spaces. And I think it's especially important for us to acknowledge where they came from.
Agreed. Especially taking, I mean, I'm this is not something I'm well versed in by any stretch of the imagination, but it's my understanding that, like, you know, Ridge Avenue and Green Bay Trail, right, they were huge pieces of travel before all of us were here. And so I would imagine that there's some rich history that that goes further beyond what we have posted. And maybe that's one thing that we can do. I don't know if you all know, but in the community house, there's a big mural, and it's the map of, like, the Mulford house, like the one of the main people of the settlement of Ridgeville. Maybe something that we can do moving forward is, you know, what Natalie, we've talked about not having that mural there anymore. Maybe we do the chunk of history that preceded that, you know, up on a mural somewhere in the building or outside the building. Maybe that's something that we can, you know, think about moving forward. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take that extra time. My brain. Sorry, Andrew.
Well, just to throw out there too, I know the Mitchell Museum here in Evanston is taking some important steps and changing their programming and focus here, it seems. And maybe that'd be that's a local possible partnership in some way. You know, maybe something creative and beautiful could come out of that related to this.
Yeah. Thank you for that reminder too. I forget that they're there. I'd never really drive in that part of Evanston, and I forget that organization is there. And as a preschool teacher, I've tried to remind myself repeatedly to try to connect and see what we can do, like in my preschool classroom. But I think having Ridgeville Connect would be amazing also. Thank you for that resource. Okay, so we will send Natalie different examples of land acknowledgement. She'll pull them together. Is there anything else we want to discuss on this, since we're not tabling it? Okay. That brings us to item C, which is Commissioner Braun's response to the September board report. So just to get everybody, like, you know, caught up on the same page, I'm hoping you had an opportunity to watch the meeting. I had sent out the link. But so at the September board meeting last week, the report from the committee asking to have a voice in the hiring process of the new executive director was given. Commissioner Matthew Mitchell, the president of the board, stated he envisions the committee somehow taking part in the hiring process, although it is unclear at this point what the process even is. The search is being led by the Illinois Association of Park Districts, which is the acronym is IAPD. And they're not, the board doesn't even really know at this point. They might have more information today than they did last Thursday, but as of last Thursday, they weren't even sure what that process looked like. So it wasn't clear how to incorporate us into that process. Brian Rosiski, who is the executive director, also shared that IAPD has been made aware of the Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee and our goals. Which is something that we had hoped was going to happen. And then Commissioner Mitchell also agreed that the new director should share our desire to commit to making the park more equitable. I feel that overall, the committee was well received in terms of, you know, wanting to at least do something in this process. Once they figure out what the process looks like, then we're going to, you know, hopefully see how we will get incorporated. Commissioner Debbie Braun, however, did have some concerns. One of her concerns was she requested that the board reevaluate the role of the committee. This is something that we're going to need to keep an eye on if this becomes an agenda item. You know, we really want to be aware of what the board is saying about, you know, how they want to relate the committee and the committee's role in the board and their decisions. But I do want to remind you that the board did pass an equity charter, and it's the charter that actually guides how the committee behaves and how we relate with the board. That's one of the really important pieces of the charter. And that is one step towards us being an anti-racist park district, is that we have things like this in place so that when there's either community members or board members who don't necessarily agree with how things are happening, we have that equity charter that's going to help solidify what the REDI committee is and does. And it's going to take a little more work than just, sharing one's opinion to get the committee to function in a different way, because that's mandated by the charter. One of the other concerns that Commissioner Braun expressed was the use of the term anti-racist. That, along with the comments centered around the concept of being denied a seat at the table, highlights the need for further training and better communication. I also feel that although we have good support from the board as a whole to get our work done, that interaction with Commissioner Braun reminded me that there are likely residents in Ridgeville who share Debbie's concerns. And so I spoke to Aisha about this. She has made some, excellent recommendations moving forward. But before I get to those, I just wanted to see if anybody else wanted to share, their any reflections that they had on the last meeting, or, if anyone wanted to speak to that before I go into some of the things that we might be able to do to move forward. Okay. A big piece of what we can do differently moving forward is being really clear in our communication. I think, as Aisha recommended, one of the things that will be really helpful is I need to make it more clear when I'm presenting to the board that I'm not presenting my own ideas, right? When I go to the board, this is a consensus of our committee. I will say there are certain situations that things will just kind of come up, and I do share my own opinion, and I need to be better about not doing that, right? I should not be speaking, and I do make it clear that it's my opinion and not the committee. But I think that it would be, I could do a much better job only speaking once information has come through the committee. So it's very clear that it's a consensus of the committee and not just my opinion when I'm, representing the committee at the board meetings. One of the other recommendations, and this is something I'll need to talk to Natalie about, but I would imagine that it's going to work out fine, is reformatting of the board report that I send in. I do use a template that Natalie provided. That's just the template that gets used for board reports for, it's the same format that Natalie uses, that Brian, the executive director, uses. But Aisha had a different format that essentially, hold on, it's opening up here. It essentially changes the way the information is given to break it into different sections. I'm sorry, I'm pulling it up, and my slow computer is taking a little while. It would break the board report into 3 different sections. And it would make it clear, what the purpose is, what the focus is, and what the intention is, what the impact will be. I think that's something that will really help the board understand why we're making recommendations. Let me read to you a little more precisely what it says. Oh. Aisha, you don't happen to have it? My Word just crashed. Do you happen to have it in front of you?
I do. Do you want me to share?
Oh, wait, it popped back up.
Okay.
No, it didn't. No, it's gone.
Do you want me to share my screen?
That would be great. Natalie, does she have that access?
Oh, I didn't think about that.
She can. Hold on.
I apologize. I have a very wise and long-lived computer, and Word just crashed.
You should be fine to share.
Okay.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. So as you can see, it has the focus areas that were addressed, the statement of impact, and the recommendation for a resolution. I think that if the board reports get changed into this format, I think that it will it'll make it more clear what our purpose is. And again, not just to the board. Like I mentioned, I think, there's going to be people in the community that have these questions too. And I think that this will just make our purpose and our goal more easily accessible, more transparent. I don't know if anyone has any, comments or feedback on this piece.
I will say so there's some pieces, adding the about this report part, as well as just having standing items about the goals and the charter are important for anyone who would come in at any time and see a random report to know the connection between the committee and the board, and the why this report is being created and shared with the board.
Thank you, Aisha. That's something that Aisha keeps reminding me of, right? We want to make sure that anyone can kind of hop into a meeting and not have to do a whole bunch of research to catch up to where we are. Having those pieces of the charter easily accessible, eliminates that hurdle that people would have to jump over to really understand how we got to where we are.
JC?
I have some, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I have some just more of an overarching response, but so I don't know if there's more to come after this document. So just, I can hold till.
The other recommendation that Aisha brought up is that at the next board meeting, we're going to review the charter as part of the board report. I think that's something that we need to do at this point. I think that we've had to remind the board of its existence multiple times this year, and I think that we just need to pull it out and give everyone a copy. Like, I'll give the board report, I'll send out a copy of the charter to everybody in the board report, and for us to as an agenda item through that board report to remind everybody of the charter and what it says, because there were a lot of questions about, if there's a board member on the committee, why is that person not relaying information back and forth? Dr. Effiam was very clear about that, was because the information was supposed to be coming from a citizen and not from a board member. I also do just want to take a minute and apologize. I really do not feel like I responded well. I don't feel like I represented the committee well in that situation. I was surprised by the interaction, and I feel like I did not do as good of a job as I could have in the moment. And that's something that Aisha and I have talked about too, in terms of me refining how I'm not only approaching the board reports, but how I'm approaching, the questions that we're getting through the board meetings sometimes.
So I think this is a good time maybe for me to express my overarching thing, because I hear both the change, and I think the language of improvements was used, which is those are all internally focused on our activities here as a committee. And then JC, I hear you apologizing as well, which, that's very gracious of you to offer. So certainly we do need to be, and I don't know what other word to use, but good tactics as a committee. And so that's how I would frame what we're talking about. But I think just to name as well that this is when in equity work, there is resistance. We have the definitions to anti-racism, to racism, all these very fundamental basic definitions are on the website, on the page. Those can be accessed. And white fragility is a thing, white ignorance is a thing, and these shape these moments. And that's something we will have to keep navigating. Obviously, we want to do so in life-giving, helpful ways that bring people along and don't harm or shame them. But that's I hope that we don't become so internally focused by this to recognize that we just need, we need to keep doing what we're doing. We need more education. We need more knowledge. We need these steps. So that's my quick reaction to those comments.
Thank you. Yes, that was the other thing that did come up was we need more training, right? Like we need to, and that was something that I apologize. I've had sick children in my house for a little while now. I had intended on looking back because we did we did encounter something at some point that I felt like was relevant to this that I meant to research, and I didn't get to it. But the board did pass that they were supposed to receive equity training within a certain time frame. And we need to follow up on that. I forget exactly what the time frame was, when it started, all that sort of stuff. But we need to follow up on that and make sure that everyone's doing their due diligence and following through with what they agreed they said they were going to do.
JC, I mean, just to speak to that, I've been, and I guess I haven't done it in the past, like maybe month, because I've been camp, but I am trying to keep up with the YW's website for when they drop their new courses, because we brought that to a board meeting and everybody and the board agreed that, so I will stay on top of that as well and make sure as I'm finding those trainings that I'm reminding people to get signed up and make sure that happens. I will help make that happen, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm going to take note too. I need to look through and see like what time frame we gave people. I don't know if anyone has gone. I know that some of the commissioners, they do equity work of their own accord, which clearly also counts. But that's something that we need to follow up on, because if we agreed as a park district this was going to happen, we have to make sure people are following through with that agreement. I also would ask the committee if you know of any trainings that you feel would be relevant to the board. If we can send them Natalie's way, that way, her workload of trying to make sure. I mean, she, like she said, relies on the YW. They have particular trainings for board members that will fit really well with what we're looking for. But if anyone knows of anything else, feel free to send it Natalie's way so she has those resources too.
JC, also when this came up, when we brought this to the board a few months ago, I believe that they did, I don't know if they voted on it or not, but it was decided, we recommended that it be a YW training. We wanted everybody to use the same language and this was before we had a consultant in place. The goal eventually is to have a training recorded that any new staff, commissioner, or committee member will watch. And so we will all be receiving the same training so that we can speak the same language, so to say. But we had agreed as a committee, and then the board concurred that it should be a YW training, since so many of us have done the YW's workshops already, that we should stick with that format right now until we have our own training in place.
Thank you for that reminder. I forgot about that piece of the conversation.
I was just going to echo the leaning into the training piece based off of that meeting, because that highlighted the need for there to be training, especially around thinking about impact of word choices, understanding it regardless of intention, understanding impact, especially for specific choices of words that can be off-putting to marginalized communities. And I think that entire conversation highlighted the need to look at that and look at that pretty quickly, that's a need that needs to be addressed soon.
Is it? Oh.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, is it also, I hope that the Board of Commissioners, obviously, and Commissioner Braun was accurate, right? Is the board can undo the charter, right? I mean, the board can make certain decisions. The board has that power. And I just, my hope for this process, there's gonna be a lot of eyeballs on this process. This is a very important process for our community. And I hope that the board could see us as valuable partners in this. It's fairly clear that we're viewed with some suspicion and even outright resistance. So I don't know how we bridge that gap. I don't know if it's even something that we can do, or but I would hope that we really get this right.
I agree. I do want to say I do not think that Commissioner Braun's words reflect the attitude of the whole board. I think that she was speaking as an individual, And I think she was speaking her own opinion. I don't think that her opinion is I don't think the whole board shares that opinion with her. I could be wrong. It's just from, I don't speak to anybody in the board outside of meetings. So everything I'm gathering are from the meetings that you all can watch too. But that's something that I'm trying to remind myself. It doesn't make it any less important. We still need to do this training. We still, right. But I do feel that as a board in its entirety, I do feel that the committee and our work is supported and valued. And so that piece I'm incredibly happy about. Yes, Natalie.
I guess this is a question, but also I'm realizing the conversations that we had with the board that we had made recommendations and the board agreed that new committee members, staff, and commissioners go through a training. It was specifically about onboarding the new folks. I'm wondering, because of the conversation and the response at the last meeting, if maybe we could do well by having a group like training session in some way. Like, I feel like so sometimes it seems like we're viewed as adversaries to the board. Like, we're all on the same team and we're all working together. We all have the same goal, right, of making the park district more equitable. And I think that is true, no pun intended, across the board. And in terms of staff, the committee, everybody, like, we're all working towards this common goal, but I think sometimes we're not communicating whatever it is. I'm wondering if maybe we need like a reset and like we all do a training together, because even if we move forward and like the new folks, we find a training at the Y and Andrew goes and Mick Morale, those are individuals. I'm wondering if maybe we need to do something all together, even those of us that have already gone through the training.
Yes, I think that my recommendation is that there's an annual training for REDI committee as well as the board, and that it should happen together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just a reminder, because of OMA, that will have to be a public meeting. Like, we will have to do that in a public forum. But we've done it before. I mean, when Dr. Effiam delivered her assessment report to us, we did that all together, and it was a special meeting. So like, that's not hard to do. It's just a matter of finding a date, and we all agree to it, and we post it, appropriately. So that's it.
Okay.
I just want to chime in real quickly here as a board member and everything else. When I initially read the report, it did rub me the wrong way as well. There are certain terms that not everybody that people view differently. And so I think as much as it's important that we teach people to use the right words, it kind of has to be a two-way street as well. And I think that some of the language in there, if you were to read it and not be trained in the language of racial equity, could be considered accusatory. And one of the problems I have in really working in equity situations is the moment you say the wrong thing, you are immediately jumped upon for being inaccurate, not using the right term. It's not something that I'm coming to from a place that I don't believe in the work of equity, but you also don't want to challenge things because you're going to be accused of something and acting in a way that is not what your intention is. And so I just kind of want to put that out there, that, that there's just, there are certain words that when you read them, you're immediately kind of put back on your back foot on it.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate your point of view. I think, moving forward with the edits that Aisha has recommended for the board reports, I think the reports will be more clear and more intentional moving forward, and hopefully it will lead to smoother work and decision making moving forward.
And-
JC, I have a question. I'm sorry. I know you send your reports to me, but does the whole committee get it?
This
Like
one,
you
I
send your board
believe,
reports to me.
I think I sent this one out to the committee. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that's something I can do also, right? Like, I don't know how we get around OMA because I can't send it out to all of you and have you all approve it in terms of like letting me know it's okay for me to send it back to the board with us only meeting once a month.
I don't think it needs to be approved by us, but I think like I'm just wondering if everybody here has read your report. Like if everybody has read it and understands what some of these triggering words could have
been.
potentially, you know what I mean?
I would have to double check, but I did ask Julie to send it out with one of the versions of the agenda. I can send it. I'm sorry, Julie, did you?
No, it's one of the attachments and one of the most recent messages.
That's what I thought. I actually had like sent her the agenda, and as soon as I sent it, it occurred to me that it would be helpful for you all to have that too. So if for some reason you don't have it, feel free to reach out. I can, resend it to you, or, Julie has a copy also. If you haven't read it, I think it would be helpful for you to read. Any feedback that you all have for me, I am more than willing to hear it and incorporate it. I've said this a whole bunch of times. I don't really know what I'm doing. I just know what I want to get done. So anything that I can learn along the process, I am absolutely willing and would appreciate the feedback. This isn't actually an action item. There's nothing for us to vote on, no like official recommendations, but I will include in my report that we need to be looking at more training. And then maybe this is agenda item for our next meeting, is for us to decide exactly what recommendation we want to make to the board about that training. We know we've already talked about we want to have the board and the committee together. Maybe we can kind of formalize that a little bit and make an official recommendation to the board, but it wouldn't be until the November meeting, right? Because we wouldn't necessarily be meeting before then.
Can I ask Aisha a question? I'm wondering if you feel like it would be appropriate, just now that you're spending some time with us, if there might be a point down the road that like, it doesn't need to be a training necessarily, but maybe like we could invite the board to a committee meeting, or we could come to a board meeting or have a special meeting where maybe like the board could hear from Aisha about like the work that we're doing together and kind of how to work together. I mean, we get the benefit of having you at all of our committee meetings, but I think it might be nice to kind of hear from you, our consultant, on like how we can work together and like what the work's going to look like this year, and just kind of set some expectations.
Yes. And I think that's what that annual training part of that should be about, is how you set the conditions, or how the collective set the conditions for doing this work, what we should expect and how to navigate it together, in addition to key terms and things that we should know. So yes. Yeah.
Great.
Aisha and I had talked about that too, about the idea that, it would be helpful to have her come and help figure some of this out. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else on that agenda item? Okay, it's 7:50. I'm thinking that we table the rest of the agenda, however the appropriate way to do that, either item by item. Or I don't know if you all want to go through the why you choose to do equity work, and then end the meeting after that. But the further items in terms of like the process for reviewing documents and all that is a pretty in-depth discussion, which I don't think that we have time to go through today. What I will do is I'll have Julie send you all the document that Aisha sent me, the recommendation. I really wish my brain worked like Aisha's did. She has it all broken out of like how we would go through the ordinances, and we can break up into groups so we're not wordsmithing all together and all that sort of stuff. So I can get that document out to all of you. So when we discuss it, you can have had a chance to read through it. But what would you all rather do? Should we wrap up now, or do you want to do the one more why we do equity work?
I'd like to see us wrap up now. We've had a productive meeting.
I agree. All right. So do we have to table each one of those items individually, or can we just say we're tabling the rest of the agenda?
I think we can say table the rest of new business.
The rest of new business, of course, not the whole agenda. Does somebody want to make a motion for tabling the rest of the new business?
I'll make a motion to table. Andrew's got it. I'll second it.
Okay, I make a motion that we table the rest of new business.
I second. Natalie.
Roll call.
Yes, please.
JC Herman.
Yes.
Natalie Silly.
Yes.
Elaine Siegel.
Yes.
Andrew Weimer.
Yes.
Matt Rogers.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. That brings us to call a committee. Does anybody have anything that they would like to say?
I would just like to say thank you, JC, for being our fearless leader and delivering those reports and writing the reports and meeting with Aisha and doing all the work that you do. I think you're great at it, and I appreciate having you here.
Thank you. I'm not fearless though. I'm very, very fearful. I just, needs to get done. Thank you.
Just
I appreciate
echo
that.
what Natalie said too. As much as we can always improve, not to let there be self-laceration in any way. We'll keep doing what we're doing and together. And yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Aisha because I genuinely, I'm not sure. I know I would not be at the place that I'm at right now if it weren't for Aisha's help and guidance, and I really appreciate it. Those of you who know me a little better, I'm a very fast talking and emotional human being. And Aisha has done a great job of taking all of that and making it into something more productive than I can do by myself. So I really appreciate it. And I think her recommendations are super fantastic and right along the lines of what the Park District needs. So I'm really excited. I was super excited to start looking at the ordinances. I wish these two other situations hadn't happened, but to be able to have this committee and to have Aisha's guidance in these moments, I think is absolutely wonderful. And I'm hoping that we can learn from this and move forward, even stronger than what we've been so far.
Thank you for that, JC. You're doing a great job. I'm echoing Natalie and Andrew as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Does anybody else have anyone else have anything they want to say? Okay. Let's adjourn this meeting. Does someone have a motion to end this?
I move to adjourn. So moved. Aye.
Someone have a second?
Seconded.
Fantastic. Julie, if you can roll call us out, please.
We actually don't have to roll call the adjournment vote.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So we're just done.
We can just all in favor.
It's just a voice vote.
Awesome.
Aye.
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 Thank you all so much. I appreciate you being here, for your time, for your ideas. See you next month.
Thanks much, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.